My name is Dr. Lena Carver. It's been 4 years since I last saw my ex-husband, and 3 since I even said his name out loud. Not because I'm bitter, but because I built a boundary so solid I forgot it had a door. I'm a trauma surgeon at Wexler General, a level 1 trauma center in Chicago. We work on the edge of chaos. Gunshots, car crashes, freak accidents. I've learned how to stay calm when someone else is bleeding out. It's easier than dealing with the wounds I don't see. I didn't become a surgeon to save the world. I became one because I lost mine. 4 years ago, I walked into a courtroom thinking I was fighting for love. What I didn't know then was that my husband, Mitchell Carver, had already decided I was disposable. And she, Tessa Marlowe, was his upgrade. She was younger, glamorous, with a kind of social media presence that made even my colleagues follow her fitness and lifestyle page. She had a smile that could soften a brick wall, and apparently a spine that could bend morality. They destroyed me with grace and confidence, lied with precision, painted me as the cold, career-obsessed surgeon who never wanted a family, as if I hadn't lost 2 pregnancies trying. When the judge handed down the divorce ruling, I didn't even cry. I walked out, took my name off the mailbox, and never looked back. Until this morning. I was 2 hours into my shift when I got paged. Code Crimson, ER triage. VIP priority. Usually I ignore the VIP tags. We're not a concierge clinic. But the triage note said, unresponsive at scene, internal bleeding suspected, prep or immediately. So I ran. The gurney was already coming through when I got to trauma 3. MTs shouting vitals. A woman's arm dangling off the side, her wrist swollen, blood soaked into her blouse. Then I saw her face. Issa. The same woman who stood in court with her manicured hand wrapped around Mitchell's arm as she gave a soft-spoken statement about my emotional volatility. The woman who posted a quote the day after our divorce was finalized. Sometimes God removes people from your life to make room for better. She was unconscious now. Ill. Breathing ragged. My stomach flipped. I stood there frozen 5 seconds too long. The nurse looked at me, confused. Dr. Carver. I snapped back into gear. Prep or 2? Debate. I want a full trauma panel, fast scan, blood cross-match. Move. But inside me, everything moved in slow motion. I didn't know what happened yet. But by the time we got her into pre-op, I had the basics. Tessa had collapsed at a charity gala. Internal hemorrhaging suspected. Blood pressure was tanking. And the worst part, she was alone. No emergency contact had shown up. The number listed, Mitchell's, had gone to voicemail. I stared at the file, debating whether to call. I didn't want to hear his voice. I didn't want him to know I was the one saving her life. But she was slipping fast. I made the call. He picked up on the second ring. Yeah. The voice was groggy. Not surprised. He was probably hungover or jet-lagged from some tropical escape with her. This is Dr. Lena Carver. Tessa's in critical condition. Internal bleeding. We're prepping for surgery now. Silence. Then, Lena. I didn't answer that. We need your consent for emergency measures. You're listed as her contact. More silence. Then he said, is she? Will she be okay? Pause. If I do this right, maybe. The line went dead after I heard a door slam in the background. Back in the OR, I scrubbed in. I was in full control, or so I thought. The bleeding source was a ruptured spleen. 2 liters of blood pooling in her abdomen. If she hadn't collapsed where she did, she would have died on the way. The team around me moved like clockwork. Clamp. Suction. And as I worked, my brain tried to separate the woman on the table from the woman in my memory. The one who sat at brunch with friends while I stared at foreclosure letters. The one who told Mitchell I was too clinical to be maternal. Now she was mine to save. And I did. Every stitch. Every incision. Every second of that surgery was done with precision, not pettiness. Because that's who I am. Hours later, I walked into the ICU where Tessa now lay hooked up to monitors, sedated. Her vitals had stabilized. She was going to live. I didn't expect her to wake up for another day at least. But I left a note in her chart. Dr. Carver to brief patient upon full cognitive recovery. I wanted her to know. Not to gloat, but because some truths need to land when you're fully awake. I returned to my office and found a message waiting. From Mitchell. It was a voicemail. Lena. I heard what you did. I didn't know you were still at Wexler. Don't even know what to say. Thank you, I guess. She's everything to me. I deleted it without finishing. But that wasn't the last surprise. The next morning, Tessa woke up. And the first thing she asked was, "Where's Lena? I need to speak to her." Alone. She looked even smaller than I remembered. Tessa was propped up in her ICU bed, pale and swollen from surgery, one arm tethered to an 4-pole and the other resting weakly on her lap. The glamour was gone. No lashes, no sculpted brows, no curated glow. Just a fragile woman surrounded by machines she didn't understand. She turned her head slowly as I entered. "Lena," she said, her voice hoarse. "Not Dr. Carver. Not you. Lena." I stayed by the door, arms crossed, coat still on. "I didn't know it was you," she whispered. "At the hospital. I mean, until they said your name." I didn't answer. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the water cup beside her. She sipped, winced, then met my eyes. "You didn't have to save me." I let the silence hang. "I did," I finally said. "Because I'm a doctor. 'Cause it's my job. And because, like you reminded me once in court, I'm good at it." Her face crumpled just for a second, and then she let out a shaky laugh. "You still carry that. You burned it in." She nodded. "I deserved that." There was a long pause. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I think someone tried to kill me." That got my attention. I stepped closer. "What are you talking about?" She glanced at the machines, the hallway beyond, the nurse's station. Her voice dropped. "It wasn't just a collapse. I fainted before. I have low blood pressure sometimes. But this felt different. Sharp pain. Sudden. I was fine all night, and then bam, like something inside me snapped." "That's how internal bleeding works," I replied cautiously. "If your spleen ruptured, it would feel like that." "But why would it rupture?" she whispered. "There was no trauma. No accident. Nothing hit me." I frowned. "It's rare, but it happens. Aneurysm. Undiagnosed condition. Spontaneous rupture due to medication. Were you on any blood thinners?" She shook her head. "No. Just supplements." "And you're sure nothing happened before the gala?" She hesitated. "I had an argument with Mitchell. Course. He was angry about a post I made. Said it looked like I was airing dirty laundry. I deleted it." "What did the post say?" She looked away. It was a quote. Something like, "Even the most beautiful homes can have broken windows." I wasn't even talking about us. But she was. I sat down against my better judgment. Her hands were fidgeting now. She kept twisting her bracelet. "I think he's cheating on me," she said suddenly. "With his assistant. The one who travels with him to conferences." Blink. That same knot twisted in my chest. Familiar, old, still burning. "You're not telling me this for sympathy, right?" said. She shook her head. "No. I'm telling you because I think she's dangerous. And because I found something." She reached for the drawer in her nightstand and pulled out a folded envelope. My name was on it. In her handwriting. "I wrote this 6 months ago," she said. "In case something ever happened to me. Kind of a will, I guess. But also proof." "Of what?" She looked at me with wide, scared eyes. "Of what Mitchell did to you. To us both. The lies. The setup. The manipulation. I didn't know the full extent until last year. And by then, I didn't know how to undo it." I took the envelope, stunned. She laid back, exhausted. "I was too scared to leave him. And now, I think he knew I was planning to." That hit me like a slap. "You're suggesting Mitchell." "What? Hired someone to hurt you?" She didn't answer directly. Just promise me you'll read what's inside. And if anything happens to me again, give it to the police. I stood, envelope tight in my hand. Why trust me? Her eyes were glassy now. Because you were the only one who still chose to save me. Back in my office, I opened the envelope. It wasn't just a letter. It was a bomb. Inside was a timeline of meetings between Mitchell and a family court psychologist. Before our evaluation had even been scheduled. Screenshots of text messages between Tessa and Mitchell, where he coached her on what to say in court. A video recording, taken secretly by Tessa, of Mitchell admitting he greased the right palms to get full control of our divorce outcome. And then, the kicker. A bank transaction to a private investigator, paid 1 month before our separation. In the note, background dig on Lena. Anything useful, especially mental health. Felt sick. Later that night, I sat on the couch in my dark apartment. The documents spread across the coffee table. I should have felt vindicated. But all I felt was anger. He had orchestrated the entire collapse of my life. The sleepless nights, the paranoia, the way my friends pulled away. The patience I lost because rumors started spreading. And all this time I thought it was just bad luck. A mess I couldn't clean up. But it had been him. All of it. 2 days later, the hospital security office called me. They'd reviewed surveillance footage from the night of the gala. Turns out, Tessa had entered the VIP lounge briefly, alone. Minutes later, a woman with a scarf covering her hair and a large purse followed her in. The angle was poor, but she stayed for less than 90 seconds and left. Then Tessa collapsed. They couldn't identify the woman. But Tessa's blood work had returned. There were traces of a rare anticoagulant in her system. Not something over the counter. Something injected. I stood at the window of the ICU, staring down at the city below. This wasn't just a breakup anymore. This was a cover-up. A trail of destruction. And now, attempted murder. But Mitchell had made one mistake. He had forgotten what I was made of. He had taken everything from me, and built his new life on the ruins of mine. But he never thought I'd rise high enough to hold it in my hands. Tessa was moved to a recovery room on day 5. She was healing but shaken. I visited her quietly. I filed a report, I told her. Hospital security has the footage. And the lab found the drug. This wasn't an accident. Her eyes filled with tears. I want out, she said. But I'm afraid. He nodded. We're going to do this the right way. Legally. Clean. You don't owe him silence anymore. Then I handed her a copy of the video she had recorded, now saved on a secure USB drive. We'll start with this. But just as I turned to leave, she whispered, There's one more thing. Turn. She hesitated. Mitchell has a second bank account. Oh sure. Cayman. I saw a wire transfer go out recently. To whom? She swallowed. A woman named Erica Langston. The assistant. Do you have the account number? She nodded. I wrote it down. It's in the other envelope. In my bag. I left without another word. That night, I emailed everything anonymously to a contact I had at the State Medical Review Board. Along with the letter, the account number, and the surveillance video. I knew what I was doing. I knew the kind of storm it would unleash. But I wasn't afraid. Because for the first time in 4 years, I wasn't surviving. I was fighting back. 3 weeks later, Mitchell Carver was arrested at O'Hare International Airport with a first-class ticket to Belize, a forged physician's note claiming a medical sabbatical, and over $1.2 million wired to an untraceable holding firm in the Caymans. The charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, tampering with court documents, obstruction of justice, and the most damning, attempted manslaughter. The evidence was airtight. The security footage, the toxicology report, the private bank records, and most of all the USB. It didn't just have his confession. It had recorded phone calls between him and Erica Langston, the assistant, discussing getting Tessa out of the way before she makes a scene. They had planned it for weeks. Tessa, to her credit, showed up at the indictment hearing, walking slowly but standing tall. She sat in the front row, jaw tight, and didn't flinch when Mitchell was brought in, cuffed, in a wrinkled navy suit. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. My involvement became public not long after. An article ran in the Tribune with the headline, "Surgeon saves ex-husband's wife, then brings him down." It wasn't my idea, but I let it run. People needed to know what had happened. That a woman can lose everything and still rise higher. That an ex-wife isn't bitter. She's just not done yet. I had no plans to go to court. I didn't want the attention. But when the prosecution called me as a witness, I agreed. Not for him. For every woman who had been gaslit, blamed, and discarded like a glitch in someone else's fantasy life. The courtroom was cold. Mitchell sat at the defendant's table, hollow-eyed, flanked by lawyers who looked more afraid of losing their retainers than of losing the case. Tessa sat 2 rows behind me. When they called my name, I walked up slowly. The oath felt heavier than I remembered. But when I sat down, I saw something that made my blood chill. Mitchell was smiling. Not broadly, but smugly. Like he knew something I didn't. His lawyer stood. "Dr. Carver, thank you for being here. Just a few questions. How long had it been since you last saw Mr. Carver prior to the incident?" 4 years, I said. "And would you describe the separation as amicable?" There it was. Smiled. "About as amicable as a house fire started by your neighbor while you're still inside." Some in the courtroom chuckled. The judge didn't. He leaned in. "And yet, despite that history, you agreed to perform life-saving surgery on his wife?" "Yes." No hesitation. She was dying. There's no room for hesitation in trauma surgery. "Would you consider your feelings about Mr. Carver neutral?" I tilted my head. "My feelings about Mr. Carver are irrelevant. His wife was my patient. I honored my oath." His lawyer pressed further, trying to imply bias, personal vendetta, anything to discredit me. But the prosecution didn't let it stand. When they showed the USB audio, you could hear Mitchell's voice. Clear, cocky, careless. "She's starting to talk too much. Tessa always thinks she's smarter than she is. Let Erica handle it. Just keep it clean." Then Erica replied. "Like with Lena." His laugh made my skin crawl. "Exactly. Lena never saw it coming. One call to the psych board and she lost 3 patients. Tess'll fold faster." The courtroom fell silent. No one breathed. Even the judge leaned forward. I looked back. Tessa's eyes were full of tears, but she didn't blink. It was over after that. Trial lasted 2 weeks. Mitchell's bail was denied. Erica was arrested days later. She flipped almost instantly, providing the details of the plan. How they'd intended to inject Tessa's drink with a slow-acting anticoagulant at the gala, wait for the internal bleed, and have it look like just a tragic medical event. They didn't count on me being the surgeon. They didn't count on Tessa surviving. They certainly didn't count on the woman they called too cold to be a mother, turning into their worst nightmare. 2 months later, the verdict came in. Guilty. On all counts. Mitchell was sentenced to 15 years without parole. Erica got 5 for cooperation and testimony. The day of sentencing, I got a call from the hospital board. They were reinstating my name for a commendation award. Something they'd quietly removed from nomination years ago, due to rumors that I'd become emotionally unstable after my divorce. I declined the plaque. I didn't need their ceremony. My vindication was already public. As for Tessa, she moved out of their condo the day after sentencing. She left behind the jewelry, the photos, even the wedding dress she once bragged about in People magazine. She moved into a modest apartment on the lakefront and started volunteering at a support center for women navigating abusive relationships. She still messages me sometimes. The last one just said, "I never thought the woman I stole a husband from would be the one to save my life. And then save me again. Thank you for not being like him. For not being like me." I don't forgive her. But I don't need to. What matters is that she's finally free. And so am I. I still walk through the hospital sometimes and see patients who'll never know who I used to be. The headlines have faded. Court is done. But every time I step into the OR, I remember. You said I was replaceable. You said I was cold, unstable, forgettable. But in the end, you were the one who broke. And I was the one who held the scalpel. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.